Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and this is how to create a Wolfenstein 3D FPS clone in Unity, and welcome to episode 26. In this tutorial we're going to add an internal timer to our game so we can display how long it's taken us to do each floor when we get to the end screen, and we're also going to add in gaining extra lives. Don't forget, click on the subscribe button and click on that bell icon as well to stay up to date with every tutorial still to come in this series and everything else on game development on my channel. With that in mind, let's get to work. So it's actually a lot simpler than what you would think to create an internal timer mechanism within a game. And a lot of people automatically come to the conclusion that it's going to be a lot of code to do this, that and the other, but it's actually real simple and there's not many lines of code to do it. So what we're going to do is go to our stats folder firstly, and we've got a couple of different things here, mostly all the global stuff, but I'm just going to right click, create a C# script. I'm just going to call this one floor timer, and let's open that up in Visual Studio. So there are a couple of different ways that you can construct a timer mechanism. I'm going to go through this way, and the way I'm doing it here is I'm going to basically add a second to the UI every second. You don't necessarily have to. You could go about it a different way. You could just internally add a second, which obviously I will explain that section and then tell you where you can do this optional version. You can actually just have the internal numbers, and then when you display the end screen, you could display the actual time there. But I'm going to display the time on that end screen every second, just because, like I said, I've said it before, the amount of resources we're using at this point doesn't really matter because it's not a resource-intensive game. So to do this, we need to add a couple of variables, and we don't need the void start there, so that method can be deleted. So the variables we're going to use an integer for the seconds, an integer for the minutes. We need to add in a bool to detect whether we are adding a second or not. And we're also going to add the actual UI element in there as well. So obviously we're going to add the namespace in there a little later on. So firstly, let's go public int and second count. So that's the number for our seconds. Next one, public int minute count, and I guess by default we'll actually make both of these equal to 0, just to make sure that we are getting this 100% accurate. Next is going to be that bool I spoke about, so public bool and adding time, and by default we'll make that equal to false. And then the actual display itself, so public game object, and we'll just call this time display. And if you remember that text element that we have the time display in, we have 0 0 colon 0 0, so we're going to have to kind of follow that same routine here. So obviously because we have a UI element here, we need to add that namespace in, so using Unity engine .ui semicolon. So this is all going to be done inside a coroutine, because a coroutine enables us to actually delay for however many seconds that we want, in this case obviously 1 second. So we're going to start by writing that coroutine, I enumerator, and we can call this anything we want. I'm just going to call it add second to make it something sensible. Open close bracket, open curly bracket. And the first thing we're going to do is have adding time equals true. The reason we're doing this is because we're going to have an if statement inside our update method to say if it's equal to false, then we do this coroutine. So that way we stop the actual coroutine running over and over and over and over. So what we're going to do is wait for a second, so yield, and then return new, wait for seconds, and then wait for 1 second. After a second, we're going to add 1 second to the second count. So to do that, we say second count plus equals 1 semicolon. Next thing we need to do is we need to check if the second count has reached 60, because if it's reached 60, it A needs to reset and B needs to add 1 to the minute count. So to do that, we go if, And in brackets, we say second count equals 60. Then we do the following. We say second count equals 0 again. And minute count plus equals 1, semicolon. And then that is the end of that if statement. So basically we reset that. Once we have those numbers set in stone, we can then update our display on the screen, the end screen. So we say time display dot get component, and in spiky brackets, text, open close bracket, dot text equals double quote plus, I guess we don't really need the double quote because we're going to be using text here anyway, but it's just a kind of a thing I do every time. It doesn't really make a difference, to be honest, in this instance. It's only when you're really dealing with only variables that are being displayed as text. But because we're doing more than that, I guess it doesn't matter. Either way, min count plus, and then in quotes again, we have that colon, and then plus sec count, or rather second count, I should say. Semicolon, so that's that line finished. And then finally we say adding time equals false, so we can reset this all over again. So the well, I say last thing to do, we're actually going to do a little bit more to this in a couple of minutes time, because you'll see why. But for now we just need to get that coroutine running, so we say if, and in brackets adding time equals false. Then we do the following, which is start that coroutine. So start coroutine, and in brackets add second, open close bracket again, semicolon, and save. So in its simplest terms, this will now count the amount of seconds and minutes that we've been playing our floor. So let's head back into Unity and wait for it to compile, and it has indeed. That's good. Now, what we're going to do is, in the global container, we're not going to add the script to that object. We're actually going to create a child object. So right-click, create empty, and then let's rename this to floor timer. And there is a reason that we do that, which will become apparent later on in this tutorial. But for now, we just need to drag and drop that floor timer onto there, and set the one variable for time display, which is timestat. And I'm going to save the scene, and I'm now going to test this out. So there are a couple of things that you'll notice as we go through all of this. Hopefully you'll notice the fact that the minute display will not display quite correctly. You may also notice that the time continues after we have ended the level. So for now, we just want to make sure that the timer works. That's all good. Okay. That's good. More ammo. Health. Oh, I need the key. That would help, wouldn't it? There is an enemy here, isn't there? There we go. I'm also going to point out that I said we're going to do lives in this tutorial as well. We're actually going to have a life just in this little secret area here. So we'll be able to pick that up in a bit. So let's carry on to the end of the door. Empty room. So as we get to the end here, there we go. So you can see the time is displaying like that, which is a little bit crazy. So if you could imagine at this point that the actual script should stop, so if we turn it off, it would stop counting, and there's our time frozen. However, we can see that the time says 1:21. However, if we are less than say 9 seconds, it doesn't display 09 or 08, it displays it like this. So that's something that we have to adjust. Also, when I turn that off there and the time stops counting, that's exactly what we have to do to complete the level. So let's do this in that order. So, or rather the reverse order of what I've just said. So let's go into our floor complete and add the extra variable. So public game object, and that's going to be floor timer, semicolon. So as soon as we enter that trigger, we need to say floor timer dot set active false, semicolon. Save that script, head back into Unity, and let's set that variable in place. So now the timer won't carry on going when we finish the level. So our next thing to accomplish is to sort out the fact that it says, you know, the seconds don't quite display right. So in order to do this, we need to set another if statement. So I'm going to leave a few lines here to split it out. So after we've sorted our seconds here, reset it to 0 if it's more than 60, we now need to say if, and in brackets, we say if second count is less than or equal to 9, then we do the following. And I'm going to take this line of code and place it here. Now there is also something else that we have to do as well, because we have to remember that the minute count is also going to be more or less than that 10 number. So we want it to display as 0, 1, I guess, or 0, 2, or if it's more than that, we want to display it as 10 or 11. So it requires a little bit of, how can I put it, thinking logically to get this working. So for now, let's just work on those seconds. So if second count is less than or equal to 9, what we have to do is say this is minute count and have that like so. So what will happen here is it will display the minute count and then 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4. Else, and then if we get rid of that curly bracket, have that in there, and then close curly bracket. All this is now saying is that if it's less than 9, display this with the extra 0. If it's more, then display it as normal, which is exactly what we want. So that is the seconds sorted. Now, in a kind of quick cheating way, we could always go 0, 0. Now, that will display the zeros correctly. However, what we now have to remember is that if we get to 10 minutes, it will end up displaying as 0, 1, 0, and then however many seconds. So for now, this will work just fine. But the best thing for us to do is to think logically about how we're going to be able to determine the minutes. And I guess we can do that inside this if statement. So we're saying if second count is less than or equal to 9, we then need to check the minutes. So if, let's say minute count is less than or equal to 9 as well, then we do this line right here. So take that, place that there. That's fine. Else, we do this line without the 0. So you can see these nested if statements working, hopefully, as we would expect it to. And in the else statement, we have to do the exact same thing. So if, and we say minute count is less than or equal to 9, then do the following. And we take this line of code to there, and then we say else, and then open curly bracket, and then place the close curly bracket after, and save the script. And I will have this script on the website for you to download. If you go over there, downloads and assets, Wolfenstein tutorial number 26, you'll be able to download it. So what we've done here, let's get rid of that 0 because we don't need it. What we're doing here is we are covering every possible angle. So when I say every possible angle, I mean that every angle where we require an extra 0. So we've got a 0 here and a 0 there, no 0, 0, 0, no 0, and no 0, no 0. So there's 4 possible outcomes that we need to cover. Due to the time, we now have covered them. So if we head back into Unity, and I'm going to save my scene once again, and press play, we should now be able to see this timer script working exactly as we want it to. So when we complete the level, we should see probably about 1 minute and however many seconds, I think. So let's go through. There we go. He's gone. So yes, I'm still aware we do have glitches like that. We are going to fix that. I know I keep saying it. We are going to. More ammo. Let's heal our health. Let's get rid of this guy. So I think at this point I really would love to see what kind of levels you guys have created with this. Because I bet there's some really good ones out there, so I'd love to see them. If you've got them, let me know. Link a video, and let's see. So let's hopefully see this complete screen working as intended. There we go. 1 minute, 8 seconds. That's a good. That's really good. It's worked as intended. Perfect. So that is how we add our timer in. Next thing we're going to do, it's going to be real quick. This next one is basically adding extra lives, and it's actually real easy to do. Are they floating? They are. They are floating. I don't know why I just spotted that. Then they're floating. There we go. Okay, so lives. So what we're going to do is add, I suppose you could call it like a spinning coin, maybe, which is going to add an extra life. So what we're going to do? Well, we can go to Game Object, we can go to 3D Object, and let's go to Cylinder. And that cylinder we can actually compress into like a kind of coin shape. So I am going to shrink down on the Y to 0.1, maybe. Oh, gosh, I don't know, 0.01 or 2 maybe. Yeah, that looks okay. And I'm going to rotate by 90 so it kind of stands up. And you can apply any texture to this at all. I guess it doesn't really matter. I might just apply this face texture because I think it does, doesn't it? It does have the face on it. So I'm just going to apply that, make it look a little bit crazy. That's funky. And I'm going to attach just a couple of scripts to it. So, in fact, probably just one script. We can do it in one script, can't we? So I want it to rotate, but I also want us to be able to pick it up. So let's go to our scripts folder, and let's go to Environment, and right-click, Create, C# script, Extra Life. Let's open that up in Visual Studio. And same with the last script, this one will be available on the website for you if you have any problems. So it's in there, and all we need to do is basically say we can get rid of void start. In update, let's have it spinning. So let's have transform dot rotate, and in brackets, let's rotate it on the y-axis so it spins as you would expect it to. 0. Let's have 1, 0, and we need to do it relative to the world around us, so we also need space dot world semicolon. We also need to be able to pick it up, so void on trigger enter. Doesn't need to be private. Get rid of it, and all we need to do here is add the one to the global life. So global life dot life value plus equals 1 semicolon, and then this dot game object dot set active false semicolon, and save. That's all there really is to it. So this will spin nicely, and it will also allow us to gain an extra life. And obviously we don't need to worry any UI because that extra life goes into the global life script, no problem, and that updates it for us. So I'm going to rename this to extra life, and then drag and drop the extra life script onto there, and press play. And let's check this out. Let's take our weapon just in case. So open up, please. So we should see our lives change to 4. There we go, that's spinning nicely. Oh, I know why. That's my fault. I did not set his trigger. it usually helps, doesn't it? When you have a trigger, you need to set it as a trigger. I'm not even bothering with a gun this time. Let's just go straight to where we need to go. And there we go, 4. You can also add a little jingle in there if you want to. I don't think I really have a sound effect ready for this. I guess we could use that collect sound, but let's modify that ever so slightly. So FPS controller, audio, effects, and collect sound. So I'm going to go Control D on that one, change it to life sound, and all I'm going to do is just increase the pitch to 1.5, maybe 1.7. So it's much of a higher pitch than our collect sound for the gold, just to see if that works out all right. So in order to get that working, we just need to go on extra life, back on the script, add in a variable for it. In this case, it's going to be public audio source, and we'll just call it life sound semicolon. So on trigger enter, we say life sound dot play. Oh, close bracket, save. And last thing to do is add that variable onto there. Save scene, press play, let's test it, and we're done with this tutorial. Stop shooting me. And yep, that'll do just fine. Obviously you can use a different sound if you want to. So guys, next tutorial, what we're going to do is we are going to start looking at a main menu. So we're going to start looking at buttons as well and linking more scenes together to kind of start bringing all of this together now. Because at the moment it is starting to feel like it is coming together. I mean, we pretty much have this finished. There's a couple of things we still need to do. So I want to kind of bring in a menu from here on. So guys, until that next tutorial, thank you very much for watching.